Okay, so if you'd like to start in a comfortable position, now if you're less than 34 weeks pregnant and it's comfortable, you can come and sit into a cross-legged position, but making sure you've got something under your pelvis so that you can tilt it forward. If you are more than 34 weeks pregnant, and also if you are currently working with a breech baby, you want to have your pelvis rotated a little bit more. So just for 34 weeks, you can bring the soles of your feet together or just extend the legs out. And for breech position, what you can do is come up onto your knees, and this allows your pelvis to rotate a little bit further forward. So you might want to put a block or a cushion or something else underneath your thighs, in between your thighs and calf muscles, and that will reduce the amount of compression that you are likely to get in the lower part of the legs. Okay, and then from that position, so whichever of those positions you have adopted that are comfortable for you, you're just going to sit and settle. So you're going to place one hand over the middle of your chest, and then the other hand over your upper abdomen. So just around the place where your baby might be rising up into. So in the early stages of pregnancy, your baby might not be here yet. So you might feel more baby down into the lower belly, and then after about 30 plus weeks, you're going to find that there's more baby going higher and higher up. So just resting your hands wherever you feel is your baby. And then just closing your eyes and just resting both your physical body and your mind. And just take a moment to notice how your body feels today. Just being aware of all the subtle little niggles that you might be experiencing. And be aware of the presence of your baby. Notice what you're experiencing at the moment. Is your baby resting, sleeping, or are they active? Can you feel movements? And then also refining your awareness of your hands. See if you can notice the subtle movements that come with your breath. So notice if there's a feeling of expansion and lifting upwards that comes with your inhalation. And just notice if there's a feeling of descension, a downwards movement that comes with your exhalation. You may be able to feel physically the upward move of the inhalation and downward move of the exhalation. But there's also an energetic movement as well that comes with your breath. So as you breathe in, just get this feeling that the breath rises up the spine. And notice a sense of space that arises as everything kind of lifts up and away in the lower part of your body. So every time you breathe in, you might find this corresponding feeling of space. And then every time you breathe out, feeling this descension of breath and energy right the way down into your sitting bones. And also noticing as you breathe out and you feel that breath moving down into your sitting bones, also recognizing the feeling of letting go, softening and releasing. So for the next few breaths, just focus on your out breath. And notice how you feel this natural letting go, this natural surrendering, this natural softening. And once you tap into it, just consider how you might be able to use this feeling of softening and letting go during labour. And then the next time you breathe out, you can just relax the hands and relax your awareness. Okay, so you're going to bring the soles of your feet together, but you're fine as you are actually, Lydia, so you can stay kneeling. You might want to come a little bit further forwards because we're going to do some spinal movements. If you're right up against the wall, you're going to need a little bit of space. So either holding your shins, or if you're kneeling, holding your thighs. As you next breathe in, just press your chest forwards. And as you breathe out, draw the chest backwards. Do that a few more times. Press your chest forwards as you breathe in. Draw the chest backwards as you breathe out. Just warming up the spine. Feeling this ripple of movement. And then the next time you take the chest forwards, you're going to drop your left elbow onto your left thigh. If you're kneeling, you're going to take your left hand onto your hip, because you haven't got a leg there if you're kneeling. And then you're just going to open up through the right side of the body. So you're going to lengthen the right side by drawing the rib away from the waist and then drawing the arm lightly over the head and taking a breath here, breathing into the right side of the body. And then drawing all the way down. And then dropping the right elbow to the thigh, or if you're kneeling, hand onto the hip. And then lengthen through the left side of your body. So just let the rib cage elongate away from the sides of the ribs. Breathing into the space. And then slowly rising all the way up. And then just gently drawing the legs together and then extending the legs out in front, so you can come and join this position, but again have the pillow underneath so there's a real feeling that your pelvis is rotating so that you're not slumping back onto the hips. So we're just going to start by sinking the pelvis down into the ground. I get a real sense of connecting down to the ground and then taking the arms out to the sides and then just wafting from side to side. So reaching over to one side, reaching over to the other side. The pelvis stays completely grounded into the floor, so we're not tipping and lifting the pelvis. And as these movements get bigger, you can see it develops into a side bend. So at some point you might just feel that you want to bring the hand onto the floor and then drape the other arm up and over, so we're still lengthening through the sides of the body. The next time you come down, you can relax. So our basic hip moves. So you're going to take up your right leg and you're going to hold the ankle in your left hand and the knee in the right hand. And then just gently ease the leg from side to side. It's a really good stretch for the hip. And as we've looked at this before, there are many, many articulations in the pelvic socket. There's a lot of different muscle groups and ranges of articulation, so we never know for sure which range of movement is the particular one for your particular hip pain, so we kind of have to go through them all really until suddenly you find one that works. So then circling the leg around, so feeling as if you're getting rid of a stirring movement, rotating the thigh in the hip joint. If you want to make this stretch a little deeper, you hook the leg across the inside of the arm. So it's the right arm coming up and through. So you're actually working more into the hamstring now. And then you might even be able to cradle the foot in your left elbow crease. And then you've kind of got a rocking baby kind of scenario. Or maybe not. So you just go to wherever you can. In all the years I've been doing yoga practices, I've found that people tend to fall into two categories. You're either hamstrings or hips. Sometimes neither, but in most cases people have either got juicy hips or juicy hamstrings. I've got juicy hips. My hamstrings are not that good. Or neither. Yeah, some people have neither. I just stretch that leg out, and that's when you think, oh yeah, it is hamstrings, or oh no, it's not.
Really tight, like super tight hamstrings, like that. This hurts.
Even the leg isn't doing anything.
As far as I can go.
And then bounce the legs up and down. And then taking the other leg up, so holding the ankle bone and the knee, and just gently rocking from side to side. So even all those relaxing and progesterone hormones haven't done anything, so they haven't made you feel any looser. Do you feel like you've gained anything in your hips or your hamstrings? Not at all?
Nothing. I feel like my hamstrings are even worse.
Really? Okay.
I'd love to be able to stretch it.
And just easing the legs around or the knees around. So you might have to just become a yoga practitioner. I mean, once all this is over, because obviously, you're limited to what you can. I mean, I don't focus on stretching in pregnancy because inherently most women are in danger of overstretching. So in pregnancy classes, we never kind of go to the full maximum. It's never about trying to stretch the body. It's about easing out all the aches, really. Okay. And then bring the left leg onto the elbow. But general yoga for people who aren't pregnant will work a lot more on sort of developing flexibility. And it's interesting because a lot of people say, oh, I can't do yoga because I'm really stiff. And we always say, well, you're the people who need to go. You know, because actually as you get older, the body stiffens and tightens anyway. So you kind of need to nip it in the bud while you can. The body feels a bit better when it's a bit loose as well. You know, when you go on holiday and it's warm, do you ever feel like really like, oh, my body's really soft? Yeah. So I hate the cold. So I always feel really contracted in the cold. Okay, and then just extending that leg out. At least you've got company. And then come over onto your hands and your knees. So a lovely back stretch that we do every week. So making some space between your knees, enough space for your baby. And then roll your spine to the ceiling, tuck your tailbone under. And then gently take the hips all the way back onto the heels. And then from there, just lengthening the arms out as much as they will go. And you might be able to get a little bit of side-to-side movement here so you can stretch into your lower back. It might be very limited, maybe just a centimetre or two in each side. And then pushing into your shins, rising all the way up, and then bringing the knees back together. So we're going to do quite a few downward dogs today because it's such a really good one to do for breech babies. So if you're not going to feel comfortable doing a downward dog today, if your blood pressure is really high, it's not a good idea. If your wrists or your shoulders feel a bit tight or injured, then don't do it. Otherwise, you're going to tuck your toes under, push back into your hands, and just lift the hips up to the ceiling. So don't worry about getting the heels on the floor, don't worry about straightening the legs. You just want the pelvis to elevate up to the ceiling. You can ease one heel at a time down towards the floor, and that allows you to just get into the hamstrings a little bit more. And then you need to come down when you have had enough. So you're all at different stages of your pregnancy, so all of your circulatory systems and your blood pressures are going to be under different amounts of duress. So please come down when you think, yeah, that's enough for me. Don't feel that you have to stay there. And then if you're not already down, then you can just bring the knees all the way down. And then from here, you're going to slide the right knee forwards and the left leg back. So this is our good old favourite hip stretches. And then from here, rocking the hips from side to side. So this can be another good loosener for the hips. And we're going to work into pigeon. So again, this is one of our go-to poses for stiff hips. So what you're going to do is come onto your hands so that you can kind of lift up a little bit out of your pelvis. And then I'm going to come facing forward so that you can actually see what I'm doing. So we're in this position, and what we want to do is lift up a little bit through the pelvis so we can do this. So you want to bring the foot towards the left hand, or an approximation thereof. It helps if the knee comes slightly out to the side. So if you have the knee directly in line with the body, it's very difficult to extend it forwards. So if the knee wants to come slightly out to the right side, then you can let it. And then once you've done that, you can just draw the left thigh backwards, and then you might find that you're in a nice position. So actually the tight hips is not affecting you in this position. So this articulation works, this is fine. You're not tight in this particular direction, if that makes any sense. Mm-hmm. Okay. And just rising up as you breathe in. And then just bow down as you breathe out, but obviously just to the point where your baby has got enough space. And then breathing in, rising up again. Breathing out, dropping down. Just a couple more times. Right. And dropping down. Now, Catherine, you're on the other leg, so when I give this instruction, you'll have to transpose it to the opposite leg. So we're going to rock over onto our right hip, and you're going to go to your left, and then you're going to slide whichever is the back leg all the way around to the front. So placing your foot against the inside of your thigh. So another nice easy stretch for the hips is to inhale, let the knee come up, and then exhale and let the knee drop down. And you're going to use the ha breath to take the knee down. Last time. And then you're going to lift the leg up, and you're going to lift the foot up and place the foot to the outside of the left leg. So now this is giving you a different hip stretch. So this is the outside of the hip, so the hip flexor and the iliotibial band. So it's not going to go.
This is it, I'm afraid.
Okay. You can bring your left leg over a little bit to, it'll give you a bit of a support. Yeah, don't push it. Don't push it. Doesn't matter if it can get there or not. It needs to kind of be comfortable. So finding that place where you think, yeah, I'm having a bit of a stretch here, but nothing's going to snap. So we found that this is the tight articulation, isn't it? This so the coming across, it's what we call it's not quite an internal rotation. There's a bit of internal rotation, but it's coming across. So it's a medial flexion, something like that. But it's just kind of coming across to the front, which is tight. Okay. Okay, and then undo, give the legs a bounce, and then swing the legs around. I'm going to do all that on the other side. So we're going to start in our down facing dog. If you're not doing down facing dog, you might want to spend some time just working through some cat poses instead. So that's just rounding, flexing the back. Otherwise, if you want to come into down facing dog, push into the heels of your hands. Elevate the sitting bones up to the ceiling, and don't worry whether the legs can straighten, don't worry whether the heels can reach the floor or not. Just focus on tilting the tailbone up to the ceiling, giving the spine a really nice stretch. In the case of the breech babies, then just making sure that you've got a nice bit of inverted anti-gravity to encourage your baby to move away from the pelvis. And then bring the knees all the way back down. And then from here, the left knee is going to slide all the way forwards, and the right leg is going to slide all the way back. And then just dropping heels, hips from one side to the other, so rocking over to one side, rocking over to the other side. So you need to do your right leg, Catherine. Otherwise you're just going to do the same leg again, and you're walking around in circles when you go. And then from here, coming into our pigeon pose, so just rising up enough onto your hands so you can bring the heel towards your right hand with the left knee coming slightly out to the left side. And also you want to make sure that the hips are level and you haven't just dropped the left hip down onto the floor, so the hips should be in line with each other. And then just dropping down on the outward. Rising up on the breath. Dropping down. Rising up. A couple more times. Then from here, you're just going to drop your left hip or your right hip, if you're Catherine, and then bring the right leg onto the left leg all the way around to the front. So now we're back into our half butterfly position. So the foot is resting against the inside of the thigh. And then again, inhaling, lifting the knee, exhaling, hard breath. And just one more time. Notice that the hip is loosening anymore. And then from here, lifting the leg up and bring it all the way over, or as far as you can comfortably get it to go. So you've got this stretch now from the outside of the hip. There's also a bit of a hamstring stretch as well, because you're actually putting weight through the straight leg. So you might find that you've got the double whammy of hip on one side, hamstring on the other, if you're tight in both of those areas. And just sitting here for a short while, allowing that stretch to take effect. You might also have a little bit of a pull in the sacral area, so it's a nice pose as well for stretching out the sacrum. And then gently releasing the leg. Bounce and stretch. Notice how that feels in the hips. And you're going to come back into a downward facing dog or cat pose if you would prefer to work with cat instead. So you can choose which of these all fours positions you feel most comfortable with. So if you're working with downward facing dog, push into the hands, so you're kind of pushing the ground away from you with your hands, and that should effectively create a really lengthened spine. And then bring the knees all the way down to the floor. So working with some movements for turning breech babies. And what we would normally do here is do them over the ball, because it's a lot easier. There's a bit more space for your baby, and it's less taxing on the wrist. So just imagine doing this on the ball. But we'll start with a calf stretch. So again, another bread and butter pose, stops the cramp in the middle of the night. So push the heel away, hold it for a few breaths. And then slide the leg all the way around to the front of your space. And you might want to take the foot a little bit wider as well, so don't feel that you have to have the leg really closely tucked in towards the body. Particularly if your baby is lying transverse, you're going to need a bit more space width-wise. So you can take the leg, if I come this way, you'll see, so this is kind of straight on, that's quite tight. But in pregnancy, you might want to do that instead. Okay. And we're just going to rock forwards and backwards. So now, Leah, you're the one who's...
I know, I've just realised.
Isn't passing it on because you're next. For the wrong leg. Well, it's not the wrong leg, it's a leg. It's a different leg. So, the idea with turning breech babies is that we go into frequent inversions. And then we come into these lunging positions, so asymmetrical poses that offer a lot of spaciousness for your baby, which is why you can see the difference. So notice how this feels now, and the amount of space you've got around your abdomen, around your uterus. Now come here as if you're leaning on a ball. Can you see the difference? Loads more space. Not so much space, but we haven't got our balls with us this week, so we'll have to just go with what we've got. And then you're going to circle the hips around. So you're going to draw a big circle with your hip. Again, this creates a really big space for your baby. And then you're going to go the other way. So you're circling in the opposite direction. And then come back into neutral, and you can just use your hand to push all the way up. And we'll have a little bit of a stretch. You're going to bring the arms back behind you, interlace the fingers, and squeeze your shoulder blades together. And now just elevate your rib cage away from your baby. So you get a little bit of a stretch across the front of the body. And then see if the arms will lift as well. There may be a tiny bit of movement. You may get quite a lot of movement. And then release the arms down. Push into the right foot and the left shin. Let the arms float up. Now lift your rib cage up away from your baby. So you're not really using your arm muscles, you're lengthening by lifting the rib cage up. So create a bit of softness around the shoulders. And you can keep the ribs extending upwards. And take a breath. Now as you breathe out, turn towards the left, but it'll be right for you, Leah. And bring the right hand down and in front, left arm behind. Brain teasers. And take the arms back up on the inhale. Now you're just going to turn the other way. So that should be easy. Don't think about left or right, just turn the other way. And there'll be a natural arm that will want to come forward. And inhale. Come all the way back. And then circle the arms all the way down. Bring them inside the leg. And then you're going to just step your right or left leg back and come into downward facing dog again. So again, if you don't want to do any more downward dogs, if your blood pressure is feeling a bit high or you're feeling a bit dizzy, then you can come into the all fours position, maybe do some hip circles or some other movements. And then bring the knees all the way down. So this time take your left leg back or the other leg if you're already down the left leg. And push the heel away, so lengthen into the calf muscle. And then you're going to circle the leg all the way around so that it's at the front of your mat. And again, you might want to take a little sideways space here, and then using forwards and backwards. So taking the hips forwards, drawing them backwards. And then you're going to circle the hips around. And now rotating, drawing a circle with your hips. And then circle in the opposite direction, so go the other way now. And then coming back to the centre, and then you want to push up onto your thigh to help you come all the way up. And then reach the arms back behind you, interlace your fingers, and just squeeze your shoulder blades. You might find there's a little bit of a lift if you draw the ribcage up and away from your baby. And you might find there's a bit of lift in the arms as well. And then release the arms down. Now push into the shin and the foot, the places that touch the ground. Let the arms float all the way up, but keep the shoulders nice and soft. Lift your rib cage away from your baby and elevate. The shoulders stay nice and relaxed, creating a little bit of space for your baby. And releasing. And coming all the way down. And then taking that leg all the way back. And again, you've got your choice. You can come into cat pose, or you can stretch back into down facing dog again. And bring the knees all the way down. Okay, so I want to do a little bit of some squatting here for those with hip pain. However, with a breech baby, the last thing you want to be doing is getting into a deep squat. So you've got a couple of choices actually, Lydia. You can come into a resting kind of break pose. This is the one we talked about a few weeks ago. This is the crowning position, where you take a break as your baby crowns. It's also a bit of an inversion, or what you might want to do actually, which you've done quite a lot of down with dogs, so you might prefer this. What you can do instead while we're doing our deep squats is to you want to get some really big moves into your hips, a little bit like a very slow hula hoop or a belly dancer, but really, really slowly, because then you're kind of dropping one side and then the other. Gives a lot of space to your baby, and maybe some circles in between, so you kind of freestyle it out. Sort of get a nice little, put some music on when you get home. Okay, so we are going to come and do some squatting. So you're going to tuck your toes under. Now again, if you've got who's got low lying placenta? I think it's yeah. So do you want to do this as well? Because actually squatting. Yeah. So it's a nice hip loosener and a bit of a space maker. So lifting one hip, then circle. So you kind of like sort of a bit of a hip lift. Think teenage girls in the bedroom. Annie, have you got low lying placenta?
Yeah.
Yeah, so do you want to do this one instead, which standing?
Yeah.
So we're doing a hip drop, circle. And then for everybody else, for your hips, you're going to tuck your toes under from all fours. Now have your feet quite wide. Don't have your feet too close together or you'll never get there. So I've got my feet sort of wider than my knees even. And then you walk the hands back so that you can just come up onto your feet. And then just have a little swivel from side to side. See, that's fine as well, isn't it? It's just certain articulation. So it's not fair to say the hips are tight, it's just that there are certain restrictions in certain directions, because that's absolutely fine. And a lot of people can't get into that position. So there's nothing wrong with your squatting, which for birth is great. It's great news because it's the best position for delivery. We haven't done stage 2 yet, have we? No, we have to do that at some point. Oh my god, I'm going to run out of time, aren't I? Maybe I should do something next month. Oh no, I'm not around. I'm not really around next Monday. Oh, these bank holidays are infuriating. They're so close together. Okay, and then you can just walk the hands forwards and then just shake a leg out, shake the other leg out. And then come back, have another go into squats. It might be a bit looser this time. And then from here, what you can do is push into your hands, swivel the feet back to the centre, bring the heels to the ground, bend the knees, and then just slowly uncurl. Just bring yourself all the way up. Okay, I'm just going to flip the camera up. Okay, so coming into our standing position, and then just bending the knees a little bit and coming into comfortable position. So it's not a very deep squat, it's just a nice gentle squat. We're going to take the arms up and we're going to reach up through one side and then we're going to reach up through the other side. And what this does, because we're dropping down through the hip, it's making a lot of space through the body. So you might be able to really feel that. This feeling of spaciousness developing. Now we can turn this into a balance if you feel so disposed. And it's a big hip balance. I'm going to show you. It's going to come over to one side. I'm going to lift that leg up. We're going to drop it down. We're going to shift over. And we're going to lift that knee up. So it's kind of like a big giant stepping out. So again, it's a big hip movement. It's good for breech and just good for hips and balance as well. So imagine you're a big giant.
Do it the same way.
So reaching and lifting. It's good to practice a bit of balancing actually when you're pregnant, because your centre of gravity is always changed. And then come back. Bit of a balance. Okay. So, bringing the hands onto the thighs and just twisting right shoulder towards left thigh. And inhaling back, exhaling left shoulder towards right thigh. And inhaling. Same again. Coming back to centre, pushing into your thighs. Take the arms up over the head. And then just drop down into your squat. Bring the hands towards each other. Inhale and rise all the way up. And same again. And then the next time you drop down, we're going to stay, we're going to sweep over to the sides, up over the head, down to the ground. So you're just sweeping the arms around in a full circle and just letting the knees bend on that journey. And then go back the other way. And then when you finish this time, just roll all the way up and bring the toes in and the heels in. And then we'll finish our standing section with a back stretch. So this is the one that I've mentioned before about doing it over the kitchen sink. Oh, look at that lovely sunset. So you might be able to do it up against the wall if your wrists are comfortable enough to flex this way. And what you would do is place your hands, so stand quite close to the wall. If you want to have a look first, I'll show you first and you can see what's going to happen. So even though the hands won't initially go up against, flat against the wall, have them back waist height. And then you walk backwards. And what you want to do is make a right angle with your body. So you may need to walk the feet a little bit, but push the sitting bones away. The arms ideally need to be horizontal. So for someone my height, this little ridge against the wall, this rail is perfectly heighted. You don't have to straighten the legs, the knees can soften, but you want to push the sitting bones away, and you get a fabulous stretch through the whole of your back. Okay, so if you're a little bit taller than me, I'm about 5'4", you might have to have the hands a little bit higher, but you can find your position once you get there, and I can come around and help. So Sam, if you bend your knees, maybe bring them a bit closer together so they find a normal position, and then have your hands a bit higher up. Yeah, that's it, and then just push your bottom backwards. Yeah, lovely. Because what we want to do is stretch the back, but without the hamstrings kind of getting in the way. Yeah. Okay. And again, Laura, feel free to bend the knees a little bit more if you want to, and then just push the sitting bones backwards. Yeah, so that we want the back to be the active part here. So you probably bring the feet a touch, maybe an inch forwards. Feet. Yeah. That's it. And then when you send the sitting bones back now, you get more back stretch. Lovely. Okay, so I'm just going to hold this for a couple more breaths. It's much easier doing it over the kitchen sink because you don't have to flex the wrists up. So some of you might be finding, as I did, that there was more of a problem in the wrist than there was anywhere else. When you want to come out of this position, you bend your knees and you just walk yourself back towards the wall, and then you might want to just circle the wrists. It's good to flex the wrists actually, it gives them a good stretch. A bit of a circle around, and then just a bit of a jiggle through the body. Okay, and I think that's all of our stomach stuff. Yeah, we're just going to come all the way down. So you're just going to curl slowly down. You might want to just dangle here in a forward bend. So if the blood pressure is quite low at the moment, then just holding this dangle can be quite nice. It just brings a bit of extra blood into the head. If you're suffering with dizziness, this is a nice pose to hold. If your blood pressure is high, and you don't want to spend any time in here at all, so you walk your hands forwards, bring the knees down. I'd say if that happens at heartburn, anything else where hanging forwards for a considerable amount of time might not be the most pleasant thing to do. Okay, so we are going to bring the soles of the feet back together. How does that feel hip-wise? Is there any bit of you that isn't? Have we done all the articulation?
Yeah, that's a lot better. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank
Yeah.
you.
So it's a case of doing all of those movements because we covered quite a lot there. So lunging, butterfly, pigeon, shoelace. So do you remember shoelace is this one, and you can actually do it with both legs if you can, and then you've got no hamstring. So all of those 4 moves put the hip into a different articulation. And the 5th one we did 2 in the lunge. So you've actually got the quad stretch on the back leg. So when you come into a lunge, you're not working just this hip here, you're working the quad on the back leg. And sometimes it's the quadricep muscle. So these are your quads at the front. If these are tight, they pull the pelvis forwards. So one of the things we can do is to lengthen these muscles. And what we would do in yoga generally to lengthen these are kind of lying on your belly back stretches, like the, bow pose. These are great quad stretches, but we can't do those. We can't do any of those back bends, so we're a little bit limited in what we can do to stretch the quads, but the lunge is a fairly good alternative, particularly if they are tight. You can get into some deep stretches, but what you have to be careful of is not letting that knee go over. So you see my shin is vertical, so my knee is supported, and I've got a really good stretch in my quad, which you can see because it's not vertical anymore. So that's vertical, that's stretching. But what you want to make sure is that this doesn't happen, because that's not good for the knee. So just make sure that whenever you go into these deep quad lunges, that your knee is supported. Because knees, they don't take a lot of punishment. Okay, so bring the soles of the feet back together. And doing double butterfly, so breathing and lift the knees. Breathing out, drop them down. And this time we're going to use the straw breath. So you're going to breathe in through the nose, and breathing out, just blowing the breath out as if you have a tiny straw in the mouth. And then just gently bring the knees all the way up. So we're going to do 2 poses lying down. I'll just quickly show them. So if you get a visual in your head, because once you're lying down you're not going to see anything. So the first one is going to be a nice twist for the lower back. So you can have the feet about hip width apart, arms resting on the ground, and then you're just going to take the knees over to one side and then bring the knees back up. Now if for whatever reason this pulls your rectus abdominis, so your rectus abdominis is your six-pack muscles along the front of the body, and what happens when you're pregnant is there's a little bit of separation. So there's two sheaths of rectus abdominis. It's not a six-pack, it's three on this side and three on that side. But there's like a bit of gristle. There's like a sheath in between the two. And what happens when you're pregnant is it separates. And this is, if it separates too much, it's a medical condition called diastasis rectus, like separation of the rectus abdominal muscles. And we don't really want this to happen. It's easily fixable post-natally. You have to recognise that it's happened, and there are ways of knowing that it's happened, but you don't want them to stretch too much. So if when you're coming into the twist you're feeling an ungodly pull in that area, in the kind of this area, then I would reduce the amount of twisting and place a block or a cushion under your knee. So this isn't going to give me much height, but you can imagine if it was a bigger block, I could just come to here and then not getting a bit of pulling, a bit of a stretch in my back, because that's what I want to do, but I'm not overly taxing my rectus abdominis. So that's your first one. I'll talk you through it. And then the second one, we're going to finish with bridge pose. So again, this is a good one for breech because it's an inversion. Good one for the quads as well. Really nice back bend for the front of the body. You can take the arms back as well. If you want to loosen your shoulders, then take your arms behind you as well. And all we're going to do is just curl up and then curl down. There is a breathing pattern that goes with this, so I'll talk you through this at the time, but I just want you to see how this looks. You can see here, you know, with breech baby, we're kind of lifting the baby up and out of the pelvis. And then coming down. So the often question I have is mums go, my baby's the right way up. Is it the right way down? I don't want them to come out of my pelvis. So they rarely do. Once babies are head down, they're quite comfortable there because it's the easiest to fit. So it's not that you're going to unplug your baby if they're already in a head down position. But most babies that are breech tend to not be quite so comfortable because they're very, you know, they're compressed in to their own legs. So if they're given a bit of an opportunity to kind of come out.
And her legs are like that as well. So.
Right. Oh, poor thing. Okay, so there are your two moves. So if you want to come onto your back and then just making sure you're going to be okay, Sal. Lie down. Yeah, and just come up and do the sitting up if you can't. Yeah. So once you come down, just have your knees bent. Take the arms out to the sides. Let the shoulder blades drop into the ground, and you want to anchor the shoulder blades. So as you rotate from side to side, you want to make sure that your shoulder blades don't lift up away from the ground. Now the next time you breathe out, gently take the knees over to the right side, and just notice how that feels. You don't have to go all the way, particularly if there's any untoward pulling. And then as you inhale, the knees come back up. And then as you exhale, they come over to the left side. And as you inhale, they come back to the centre. Just carrying on with the rhythm of your breath. And what you might find is maybe after the first 2 or 3 repetitions, you might find there's a little bit more ease in the lower back. The next time you come to the left side, That will be the last of your twisting movements. And then from here we can come into the bridge pose. So if you want to introduce the shoulder stretch, you can take the arms back behind you as well. Have your feet hip distance apart. I was just going to say that if you turn it that way, Sam, even, yes, not flat, yes, and then you can really get the chest forwards. So the next time you breathe in, let your knees push into the centre of the room, just a little movement so you feel the lower back lengthen. And then as you breathe out, push your feet into the ground and slowly rise up away from the ground. As you inhale, stay, and then on the out breath, slowly peel back down. Try and get each part of your back, particularly the lower back, to push into the floor. And just continue in the same way. The first inhale lengthens the lower back. On the exhale, you then actively push the feet into the ground and rise up. On the inhalation, you stay, and on the out breath, you peel back down vertebrae by vertebrae. And the next time you come down, you can finish your practice. So from here, you can come into your position for the relaxation. So you're very welcome to sit for the relaxation if you feel that you're going to be more comfortable in that position. Otherwise, you can come and lie either on your right side or your left side, whichever one feels to be the most conducive. And we'll just relax for a short time in this position.